At 4:47 p.m. local time, a Russian Su-34 Fullback lifted off from Saki Air Base in Crimea on what its crew believed was a routine strike mission. 40 minutes out, 40 back. What they didn't know was that they'd been tracked since their wheels left the runway. 18 kilometers inside Ukrainian territory, hidden in a tree line with its radar cold, a Ukrainian Patriot battery had been waiting for exactly this moment. The Russian crew climbed through 15,000 feet, heading 330 degrees, threat receiver showing nothing but background noise. At 18,000 feet, the weapons officer configured the glide bomb release parameters: 62 kilometers to the launch basket, 11 minutes to weapons away. Target a grid square Russian intelligence had flagged as a Ukrainian command node. Whether it actually was, he'd never know. The pilot leveled off at 24,000 feet and went mission silent. No radar, no data link chatter, just a cold airframe on a straight line heading. What the crew couldn't know was that their airframe still radiated heat, and Ukrainian passive sensors had been watching that thermal signature since it crossed the coastline. The pilot believed he was invisible. In reality, he was a flashlight in a dark room. The Patriot battery commander stared at his display and allowed himself one thought: this is the one. 21 minutes of passive tracking, and Su-34 flying fat and happy on a predictable heading, completely unaware it had been watched the whole way in. The geometry was perfect, but he'd been doing this long enough to know luck cuts both ways. The moment his radar lit up, that crew would fight to survive, and Russians don't eject over Ukrainian soil if they can help it. The passive track alone wasn't good enough. Thermal contrast gave him a bearing with a 12-kilometer margin of error at range, too wide to guide a missile into. Shrinking that cone meant switching on the radar, a C-band phased array powerful enough to track a fighter-sized target at 150 kilometers. That kind of power doesn't whisper, it screams. He ordered a 3-second burst. The radar caught the bomber at 88 kilometers, collapsing the uncertainty cone from 12 kilometers to under 2. Better, but not enough for a firing solution. The radar went dark. 3 seconds was enough for the Russian Orlan 10 drone circling overhead, its payload tuned to catch exactly that kind of C-band transmission. The signature was unmistakable. The operator relayed the contact to Russian fire coordination, narrowing the search to a few hundred meters. Within a minute, the first FPV drone was inbound, vectoring toward the tree line. A Ukrainian Bukovel electronic warfare truck parked nearby caught the signal and jammed it. The drone went down in a plowed field. But a directional jammer is a spotlight in a dark room. It tells everyone where you're standing. More drones followed, probing different frequencies, mapping the defensive bubble, one downed drone at a time. A Ukrainian FPV team working from a nearby basement hunted the Russian operators by tracing jam signals back to their source, taking out one cell only to watch another take its place. The commander checked the track again. Su-34 at 20,000 feet, 8 minutes from the engagement window, still no firing solution. He ordered a second burst, 4 seconds this time. Clean return, bomber at 22,000 feet, range 81 kilometers, closing fast. But this burst gave the Orlan something new: the radar's pulse repetition interval. Its unique fingerprint, not just a radar. Confirmed Patriot, the single highest value target in theater. FPV volumes spiked, 5 or 6 drones probing at once. Then a Grad rocket launcher opened up, firing all 40 tubes at the general area of the 2 emissions. 2 short bursts had given Russian targeting a spread instead of a point. The rockets landed a kilometer north, close enough to shake every vehicle, not close enough to hit. Ukrainian counter-battery radar traced the launch back, and a Ukrainian howitzer battery answered with precision-guided rounds. The Grad displaced. The bomber was approaching the engagement window. One more emission would give a firing solution, but this time, the radar couldn't flash and go dark. Guided interceptors need continuous illumination to steer, and that meant a fixed, uninterrupted signal for every Russian sensor in theater to home in on. At 5:21 p.m., the Patriot radar went active for good. The beam acquired the bomber at 73 kilometers and locked in under 4 seconds. The first interceptor, 900 kilograms accelerating to Mach 5, roared off the rail. In the Su-34's cockpit, the threat receiver lit up. The pilot threw the aircraft into a hard defensive brake at 6 Gs, while the weapons officer fired the jamming pods and dumped chaff. Thousands of metallic strips blooming into a cloud that mimicked a second aircraft. On the ground, the moment the missile cleared the rail, the commander ordered displacement. Soldiers ripped cables. hooked launchers to tow vehicles, and the jamming truck widened its coverage, but the radar had to stay on. 30 seconds to impact. The bomber cycled through evasive turns as the Patriot's radar adapted in real time, burning through every trick the jamming pods tried. The first missile detonated 60 meters out, too far for a kill, but close enough to shred systems and rattle the airframe. Still flyable, barely. A third of the countermeasures were already gone. The pilot faced the choice: abort for Crimea or press on to the target as briefed. He pressed on. The commander authorized a second shot. 40 seconds of continuous radar emission was already enough for Russian fire coordination to be plotting another Grad salvo. Every additional interceptor meant 15 more seconds, broadcasting his exact position. But the bomber was still flying, still carrying its bombs, and if it recovered its release geometry, an apartment block was going to have a very bad evening. He fired. The second missile arrived at a bomber down to a quarter of its countermeasures, and the Patriot system was learning the aircraft's habits with every turn. This one detonated close enough to pepper the fuselage. A hydraulic warning flashed. The right engine temperature climbed into the amber, damaged, but still responding. 60 seconds of continuous emission now. Somewhere behind the front line, the relocated Grad battery was almost certainly back in action, cued by that signal. The Patriot crew had no way of knowing the rockets were already inbound. 2 misses, 5 interceptors left, a bomber still flying toward a city full of people. 3 more shots meant 15 more seconds of exposure. Missing meant burning through 8 interceptors at $3 million each, with nothing to show for it, and a target that now knew exactly where he was. Holding fire meant 3 tons of explosive gliding into a neighborhood at dinner time. He fired everything he had left. 3 missiles, launched seconds apart, closing from 3 different angles. Turn to beat the first and you fly into the second. Dive from the second and the third has a clean shot. The bomber tried one more brake turn on nearly empty dispensers. It wasn't enough. 90 seconds of continuous data had let the radar learn the jammer completely. The instant the third missile cleared the rail, the operator switched to passive. Done transmitting. The missile's now riding home on reflected energy alone. The mast began folding as soldiers guided it down. The jamming truck still working the drones, chasing a signal that no longer existed. 73 kilometers away and 14,000 feet up, the bomber was out of answers. Airspeed bleeding away, countermeasures dry. The first missile detonated 15 meters from the left wing, shredding control surfaces and punching through the engine housing. The second went off under the fuselage moments later. Flight control gone. The third never needed to arrive. The bomber came apart over the Black Sea. Neither bomb released. The strike on the city never happened. On the ground, the operator watched the track dissolve on his passive display as the mast finished folding. Then, he was already moving. Into the cab, engine running, pulling onto the access road before the wreckage stopped falling. The battery scattered down 3 routes. Headlights off, jamming still running as it rolled. Counter-battery fire suppressed Russian positions as the convoy dispersed, and minutes later, Russian rockets slammed into an empty field.